What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Good Wolf Project. I'm your host, Jerry Scarlato, and today's conversation is with Tessa Arnold. Tessa is the co-founder and COO of SnapBack Energy, and she also practices Ayurvedic health and wellness through her coaching business, Balance of You. Tessa is a wealth of knowledge. There are many times during this conversation where I have to stop and gather my thoughts before I move on to my own thought or the next question, because I'm processing what she's saying, because what she has in her brain is so profound. Her wisdom that she has in her brain is so profound, and the way that she explains it and brings it to the world is that profound as well. We talk about things from the difference between the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system and how you can start to calm yourself down through the breath, to meditation and some unknown things about meditation, as well as some things that people think are the way meditation is, but that's not really true. We also talk about her breakdown, her stress breakdown that she had while she was in the corporate world, and how her self-care practice basically started based off of her stress breakdown that she had, her nervous breakdown, and so many other things that we talk about. It's such a great conversation. So again, pen and paper is going to be very necessary for this one. But first, make sure that you hit the pause button and go give us a quick review. You can give us up to a 5-star review on Spotify or on Apple. That is important because the more reviews we have, the more people that we reach, the more people get the good message. So you are spreading the word yourself by giving us a review and helping us spread the message as well. So greatly appreciate it that you do that. Now enjoy this conversation again with pen and paper in hand with Tessa Arnold. All right, Miss Tessa, it is great to have you on the show. Super excited and super grateful that you were able to make it. I want to jump in by talking about self-care first. There's a couple other topics I want to jump into, but I want to talk about self-care first. And I specifically want to talk about it from the point of view of society that tells us that self-care is selfish.
Mm.
So I heard you say on a podcast that
Yes.
self-care is one of the most unselfish things that you can do. The way that I say the same exact thing is that you can't be selfless before you can't be, what am I trying to say? You have to be selfish before you can be selfless. You have to
Absolutely.
be selfish before you can be selfless. But that's not something that we're taught, and that's not something that society is comfortable with,
Mhm.
because we're told to give ourselves up for others. We're told to sacrifice our wants for other people's wants. Um,
Mhm.
how did you come to that realization, I guess? Let's start with
Mm.
that.
Goodness, that's a great place to start because it started with burnout. I was completely and utterly burnt out and broken and lost. I had lost myself. I had lost it. Gosh, I'll get vulnerable with it and I'll get heavy with it. I'd lost who I was, my identity. I would look in the mirror and I did not identify with who I was anymore.
Mm,
And I didn't realize that it happened so gradually. I kept pouring more, giving more, trying harder. And it wasn't that I wasn't doing what I thought I should be doing. I didn't understand that I was depleting myself so completely that I became, for lack of a better term, a shell. I was a shell of a being that was sleepwalking through life, that was continuing to try and grip onto life so tightly that all it could do was just shatter in my hands and fall apart. And that's where I said something's got to give because there's nothing left to give. So what am I going to do?
So I'm curious, during that time, do you think that you were giving and giving and giving because you thought maybe eventually that you would feel the thing that you were supposed to feel by giving so
Yeah.
much? Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Like I was seeking something. If I just kept giving enough, it would be returned to me, or I'd feel the void or the hole or whatever it was. When in actuality, it was in the completely wrong direction. What I needed to be pouring all of that on was myself. All of that giving, I needed to go into self. I needed to start to find stillness and identify what it was that I needed so badly. But at that time, my life was hemorrhaging. It was from the outside and it probably looked fine, but from the inside it was imploding. And I was losing control. And coming from my background, being a project manager, having the structure around, I was like, okay, keep putting the structure around it, keep band-aiding
Yeah.
it up,
Yeah.
keep doing the things that you know to do best, put on the brave face and keep marching along and stay busy because that's what you see out there. That's what's constantly being put in front of us. So I'm just doing sort of through a learned mentality what I see everybody else doing. And I'm like, okay, this has to work, or what I saw my parents do, or what I see other people on social media do, or this and that, or the people around me, when I wasn't stopping and really taking account for what I needed, but I didn't know any better. And I give myself so much grace then to completely fall apart. And that's what I did. Yeah.
No
And
doubt.
that's where I had to learn. It's like you take a step back and you have to realize at that point, nothing that I'm doing is working the way I thought it would, right? I have got to let go. I've got to release control.
What did that process look like for you?
Mm-hmm.
So recently, last year, I closed a business that I was in for 10 years, a fitness studio, and got a divorce that I was in for 10
Mm-hmm.
years, both within a 6-month time frame. So I know the process that I went through because a lot of the same
Right.
sort of things, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of who am I? Because
Yeah.
now part of my identity, well, two parts of my identity, I guess technically were gone. The marriage
Right.
and the business were kind of they were out of my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious what that process looked like for you.
It's very similar, actually. It's funny, and I don't think people are brought together by chance, but we have very similar stories there. As I was also navigating what would become a divorce, and I was helping my partner who was struggling with some very serious health issues. And to see somebody you love and care about, and you can't help them, and you keep trying, and it's not your story, and it has nothing to do with you, and you have to work through that and you have to find it. There's nothing wrong with you. You can't fix or save. You didn't cause this. You can't change it. But just seeing somebody you love struggle that much to the point where now your marriage is gone. And we were together for 16 years. We were married for 11. He was my best friend. And that was one of the hardest things I ever had to navigate. I had two small children at the time. And then I have this career, which has been my rock. It has been
Hmm.
my steady place. I can leave home in tears and wipe them off and show up and work and put on that face and have the people that I work with, they respect me. I built rapport, I built a network, and I could put on that face of the commercial global banker or
Yep.
whatever role I was at the time or the team that I had and fully submerge and separate, right? So I had the true identities. Identity is such a funny thing, and we hold on to it so tight because we feel for some reason if we let go of it just a little bit, who are we? Because we
Mm.
haven't dug any deeper. And the first thing that I had to do was take a leave of absence. And that was the hardest thing that I had done. And I've lost a father and I've lost a brother when I was younger. And those were so difficult. This was just as hard for me because it was my safe place. It was a constant. And I was so fearful in life of what was going to happen next, having lost them in tragic accidents. And but I picked myself up from that. And I said I need to take leave. And it was one of the hardest conversations I had to do because they had always been there for me. You know, they were my harbor in the storm. And that was difficult. And then I went in and I saw a doctor and she's completely agreed with me. And then I seek some therapy to start this process of unraveling who I was at this point and what this was. And then I separated and moved back home across the country with my two small children. And I went to my grandparents' house and I remember sitting there on the floor and being like, what is this? What has
Hmm.
happened to who am I? What is going on?
Mm.
What am I gonna do next? You know,
No
that's
doubt.
yeah, it was tricky. It was hard. Oh, I look back and what a brave how brave I was and to get
Definitely.
up each morning and how brave you are and how brave we all are and those listening on the phone. You are so much stronger than you know.
Hmm.
And let's get down in the trenches together and say that darn it, that was hard. That was some of the hardest, darkest times. and they won't be the last. But the fact that I had the capacity to hold all of that and find my way through, and I still am, whew, I don't know that there's stronger beings out there than us with the full capacity to do all of this.
So that's strong. And like I said, I can feel the energy is just coming through your voice.
Yeah.
And having gone through, again, a similar experience, I can certainly also literally feel what you're
Mm.
saying. So, and it resonates a lot. So I'm curious, you said you went to a doctor, and
Yeah.
I'll ask questions and then you stop answering when you feel uncomfortable.
Sure.
You said you went to a doctor. So you were
Mhm.
having like physical symptoms or mental symptoms,
Yes.
or what was it?
Absolutely. No, I think I have come a long way where I will share for the better
Whatever
of
you are
anybody else.
comfortable with.
No,
Whatever you are comfortable
absolutely.
with.
Absolutely. No, I was having physically manifesting pain all the way up my back to my neck because the tension and the stored tension was so deep within my muscles because I didn't know yet how you work energy through your body, how you store past traumatic events in your hips. I'm now a certified yoga instructor. Go figure. And I work with
Mm.
this all the time with people, an Ayurvedic health coach. So all these, but I didn't know any of these things. I wasn't in tune with my body, but it got so tense and so bad that I could only hold my head over to the right side. I had tension in my neck. I would hunch over. Oh goodness, I had the whole array, stomach issues, GI issues, headaches, chronic headaches, fatigue, lack of energy, and here I am just still trying to show up, put on a brave face, play with my kids, to get down on the floor with them after I've just had an argument with, my husband, and just play with them and interact with them because I know about early childhood education because I've read all the books.
Hmm.
But I didn't do any of the things for myself, and now to look back and see how I was so depleted and show up with them, I'm still very proud of myself, but that's what I wish to share with people right at this stage. So yes, it manifested in such a way that the pain was pretty intense. And I would get on a plane in the morning, fly to see a client, go into a meeting, and just pull it all together, get back on the plane and crumble in my chair because I was in such pain in my back and shoulders and neck from that anxiety, tension, stress. And when I say that energy is stored in your body and trauma stored in your body are real, they absolutely are. And the doctor could see the pain that I was in, and that was the first stage to starting to help myself.
Yeah, there's a book, The Body Keeps the Score, I think is
Yes.
the name of the book. It's a
Yes.
fantastic book. And
Hmm.
that's basically the premise of the book is that
Yeah.
it holds it. It
It
holds on
does.
to it holds on to everything.
Yes.
It's interesting. Last week I talked with a holistic health practitioner. He treats autoimmune diseases primarily through healing the gut, through,
Hmm.
of course, changing from a ultra processed diet to
Right.
primarily a whole food diet through testing and so on and so forth. So, this is an important point for anybody who's listening and an important connection because what we talked about with him is how food can impact you in a different way that you don't understand. You
Right.
may be having headaches, you may be having this, you may be having that, and that could be causing it. Stress is also another very lurky and dangerous thing that can really grasp you, and you don't know for sure that that's where it's coming from
Right.
unless you take the time to figure out that that's where it's coming from. You don't want to, this is going to sound bad, and it's not it's not the way that it's going to come across, but you don't want to end up like Tessa and have to
Right.
go down
Please.
the yeah, sorry to throw you under the
No,
bus.
not at all. Go right
I know,
ahead.
but have to, you get to the point where you have to go to the doctor, and you have to go to this doctor
Right.
and then go to that doctor. And I go get my head scanned because I'm not sure what's going on with my head. And I go
Right.
get my stomach scanned, and then I go get all these scans. And what it comes down to is the energy that you're holding in your body. So that's amazing.
Absolutely. And I would also add to that the nervous system. So we are, as a society, tend to stay in the sympathetic nerve reaction. So we're in that fight, flight, freeze. and we don't realize it. So even if you might not necessarily define how you're feeling as stressful or carrying stress, I would ask you to really, what's your heartbeat at a regular basis? How's your breathing? Is it shallow? Is it just in the lung breathing? There's so many questions that we go into in my guided coaching, but we really have to figure out what's in our environment and how are we reacting. Is it emotional, just owning us, driving us? Do we have any control? What's our thought pattern? How are we showing up in the world? And how often do we get into that parasympathetic, that balance, that homeostasis? So yes, absolutely. Those three things, you've got to take accountability because this is your life and you're the agent of it. How are you going to live it?
That's strong. It's interesting that you say, and that is a perfect segue, by the way,
Yeah.
because I want to get into the parasympathetic versus sympathetic
Mm-hmm.
nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
But first, it's interesting that you speak about the heart rate, because one of the things that I
Mm-hmm.
track pretty closely is my resting heart rate. So at night or at the first thing in the morning, what I look at is what was my resting heart rate the night before. During the time, so year and a half ago, my resting heart rate on average was between 46 and 48.
Mm-hmm.
While I was going through the divorce and closing the business for about a 6-month period of time or so, it bumped up to between 51 and 52.
Yeah.
And just recently, it started going back down. It's been 48 for the last week.
Mm-hmm.
So to prove your point, and it's not, my physical activity actually went up. I started walking more during that time,
Right.
because you talk about control, like I went for the things I could control.
Mm-hmm.
So I walked more, I hiked, I trained more. I tried not to overtrain. So I was conscious of that. So a lot of it was low intensity, just like steady state movement.
Right.
But so that it wasn't that. I know that it was the constant haze of stress that was going
Yes.
through my life. And that's the hard thing to really see,
Yes.
right?
It is. It's so hard to get perspective of.
Mm,
And it just has such a profound impact on you. And I love what you said about the movement too, because I always like to share, emotions are thoughts in motion. You got to move
mm,
them through your body. And it doesn't
mm,
have to be the high impact, but everybody could just check that it's something that's free. It's something that they can check. And there's easy, simplistic ways that you can integrate into your day that can help you take agency over that and really control how you're showing up in your life and how you're taking care of your body, right? And being aware of that is step one.
mm, most definitely. All right. We got a bunch of rabbit holes we could go down, but let's go back
Yes.
to the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. I'm glad you brought that up. This is definitely a epidemic in society, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
This haze of the sympathetic nervous system. I'll say just like an angst that I think a lot of people just have constantly and don't recognize.
Right.
So can you start by explaining, you kind of did, but
Yes.
explaining the difference between the two, sympathetic versus parasympathetic nervous system?
Absolutely. And I'll give a couple analogies too. So in your sympathetic nervous state, right? So your heart rate is going to elevate, your breathing is going to elevate. You start to feel some of that building of tension, right? Because it's preparing you to save yourself in theory. So back when we were not, the dominant predators on the earth, and we had to run for our lives, and we, had predators that were chasing us, and we lived in caves, and we scavenged, and we hunt. Those are the type of things that sympathetic nervous state would allow us to flee, save ourselves, protect mode. So it's meant to protect you. And I think that's a key thing to remember, that your sympathetic nervous state is meant to be, it's the fight, it's the flight, or it's the freeze, depending on whatever your brain and your body is telling you, right? Because that's going to trigger before you even realize what's going on, a self-preservation mechanism. I read a really interesting just piece on that the notifications that we get on a daily basis, whether they be from our phone, our email, ding, dang, dong, I don't know, all over the place, watches, I can't do it. Those actually trigger your sympathetic nerve reaction as if you were being chased by a predator.
That's
And
crazy.
yes, and I know we all love to get the notifications. We want to be on it. If we're not answering in a second, where are we? If we're not getting back, which that's a whole nother situation
Mhm.
we get into, the whole idea of busy. But those notifications, the constantly being on, is creating this constant of the sympathetic nerve reaction, and that's where we stay. And what happens is when we stay there and hyper activate the sympathetic nerve reaction, tension builds, lack of patience, lack of stillness, a constant react of the muscles, of the tissue. Your body just is not meant to stay in that state, and it wears on you. Mental fatigue, lack of energy, just irritability. The list goes on, and it especially affects your nutrition, your digestion, your sleep. When we get into the parasympathetic, it's a gift to ourselves. It's where we should be staying most of the time, honestly. It's the homeostasis, as they call it, and it's the balance and relax. Your muscles are relaxed, your mind's relaxed, your jaw's relaxed, you're not tense. I think it's a beautiful practice where you check in with your body from your tip of your crown all the way down to your toes. What's tensed? What's flexed? What's feeling tight and locking up. And when you do that, you're slowly going into a parasympathetic. There's also another, people are like, okay, well, how do I do this? How do I get into it? And there's ways you get into quickly. And one of the main indicators and one of the ways that you can actually go from sympathetic to parasympathetic is using your prana, your breath, your life source. We do it all day long. We breathe. Unfortunately, most of us only do shallow breathing into our lungs. We don't do the deep breaths, the diaphragm breaths, the ones that go really through our whole bodies. Anytime you take a deep breath, and you take a count of 4, 5, 6, whatever it is on the inhale, taking it in through the nose, really feeling it, fill your diaphragm in your body, and then you extend the exhale by 2 to 3 seconds longer. You're going to be taking your body from sympathetic to parasympathetic nerves. It's a beautiful practice to do before you go to sleep. If you're struggling with insomnia, it's a natural way to help you get down and relax. And yeah, it's quite beautiful. Actually, just felt my whole body relax just there.
Yeah,
So I was like,
that's
yeah,
cool.
yeah. So it is. Oh goodness, it's a problem. It's a problem with the world today, and I can look at people and see, people in my family, people that are close to me, and see when they're actively staying in that sympathetic nervous system reaction, and I just, if they're prepared to, because I will only meet people where they are, I'll take their hand and be like, just breathe with me for a second. Breathe with me. And it feels good. It's like
Mm.
a warm blanket all around you.
Yeah. Well, it's you kind of want to grab them anyway and just say, "Hey,
Yes.
chill,
Yeah,
chill out."
just chill.
Usually
Right.
not very productive, um,
Right.
but nonetheless, again, and I like to relate this back and tell the story because I think people can make a connection. This is something that I started practicing and paying a lot of attention to maybe over the last 4 years or so.
Mhm.
After I read the book Breath, I think was the name of the book. I forget the
Mhm.
author. There's another one, The Oxygen Advantage. I forget the name of that author too. That's terrible. Anyway, they're two great books, and they basically teach the importance of nose breathing versus mouth breathing, and the
Right.
importance of, like you said, breathing through the diaphragm instead of breathing through the chest and the lungs.
Yes.
So, another thing that I recognized while going through this stressful state was I was hyperventilating. And that's how most
Mhm.
people breathe, is through
Right.
hyperventilation. It's this kind of like
Yeah.
puffy, puffy, short burst of
Mhm.
air. And it's a upper chest, upper shoulder kind of movement. And
Right.
I would have trouble catching I'd just be laying there relaxing, and I would feel tension in my chest and I'd have
Yes.
trouble catching my breath. I'd go for a walk and my breath would leave me quicker.
Mhm.
Again, I wasn't out of shape. It wasn't anything like that. It was this added element of tension and how it was affecting me. So being aware of that is definitely super important. I'm curious, what's one practice for knowing if you're breathing through your diaphragm versus through your chest and your shoulders?
Absolutely. So you want to take the time, relax yourself, sit somewhere comfortable, lie down if you want to, and feel your stomach actually expand out. So you're going to feel that expansion through your stomach, and you're going to take that breath in through your nose and then hold it there. Hold it there for a couple breaths and feel that expansion. And you're going to feel the breath come in and fill your body in ways that you know that it's not that short. It's not the short almost when you're like I'm talking quickly right now. It's not that short just in your throat, just at the top of your lungs. It's that deep breath that fills, that relaxes you. I love it. It's a gift every time I feel it come in. And then it's that exhale out and you feel the extension and you realize then that you filled all the way down to your diaphragm. You filled your lungs up and then you let it go. And it's not meant to burn, it's not meant to be painful. Get comfortable with it. But when you start to tap into what that feels like to really take that extended breath and sitting up nice and tall, and it will actually lift up your body, fill into your chest, fill into your stomach, and let it go. It feels really darn good. And you're like, all
Mhm.
right, then keep doing it. And you'll know what it feels like when that happens. And I would tell you, then practice. And you might not be everybody's best friend at first, and then they're going to really appreciate you. But when you're with your family, when your partners, your children, your friends, and you see them, having that moment or catching their breath, be like, just take a deep breath with me, or just start doing it. Just don't even say anything and start doing it. And you'd be surprised how many people do it with you. I was reading about a gentleman, and I hate this, I forget his name now, but you forgot the book author, so it's okay, but he was
It's fine.
lovely.
No
It's
judgment.
fine. So it's a passive bit. And he said before he walks out on stage, he in the microphone takes a deep breath. And he said he does it twice as he's walking out and pauses, and he can hear everybody in the audience take one. And then they get started and he's already connected with them. And I was like, what a gift. You connected, but
That's
with
cool.
nothing but your breath. And they are here now because they've thought about it. I would say it's the key. It's the key to life. It keeps us alive, literally. But it's also the key to stillness. It's the key to productivity. It's the key to centering yourself, to being able to, I will never use the word control your emotions, but work and feel through them, to not hold on to them, and also with your thoughts. It is the most powerful tool that we have, and it does not cost us a thing. It doesn't.
Mm. I definitely agree with all of the above.
Yes.
One of the things that I would emphasize on the breathing pattern is the exhale, and I think you did emphasize
Yes.
it. So I'm not suggesting that, but the exhale, because a lot of
Yes.
our issues is that we're not necessarily inhaling
Mhm.
enough and through the body, or exhaling enough and letting everything actually
Right.
out. So the exhale is a big thing. And that's really where also a lot of people struggle, is just the exhale itself and actually being able to breathe
Yeah.
out. What's interesting is in those two books, they talk about carbon monoxide buildup in the body,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
how that actually has a huge impact on why people feel like they're having trouble breathing. It's not because necessarily they're not getting enough oxygen, but it has something to do, and I can't remember specifically, but something to do with the carbon monoxide buildup in the body. So
Absolutely.
very interesting.
It
Um,
is.
Go ahead. Did you
Oh, I
guys?
was just going to say one additional, and for those who maybe aren't familiar, I would also say too, on that note, as you're getting comfortable with it, a beautiful practice is box breathing. You count in for 4, inhale, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4, and you build this beautiful box. It's a practice that's been around forever. I'm sure the books probably talked about it too, but as you're getting comfortable with the holding and taking in with your breath, for some people, it's very difficult, especially if you're in the middle of having anxiety or panic attack. Believe me, I know it can be so tricky, but if it's a simplistic, simple way that you don't have to go look, it's simple box breathing, 4, 4, 4, 4. And yeah, definitely practice it.
Well, again, and if you think about it naturally, like what do people do when they're stressed out? They go, "Ugh."
Yep. Hold the
they
breath.
take a they take a big breath and they "Ugh,"
Yeah.
and then they let it all out. So this is basically you practicing letting it all out without having to
Hmm.
gasp and big exhale whenever you're stressed. Not that you're not
Right.
going to possibly do that anyway. But
Right.
good. I'm glad you brought up again another great segue. I'm glad you brought up emotions and thoughts,
Yes.
because yet another thing I believe that people struggle with is thoughts and feelings,
Mhm.
or thoughts and emotions. I don't know. Do you think feelings and emotions are the same? No, I guess. What are your thoughts on that?
I think
That just
feelings are assigned. I think feelings can be assigned. I think they can be pre or subconsciously assigned, preconditioned notions of how you can feel or should feel based on something that could have potentially been taught to you or others' opinions. I Feelings are interesting to me. I think they're constantly evolving.
mm,
Whereas emotions are thoughts that you're having in motions that are going to drum up. We all have a beautiful capacity to express so many incredible emotions. And then there's been connotation, well, that's a bad emotion. You don't want that emotion. And we're going to chase happiness. What's finding my happiness? No, that's just one of the beautiful rainbow of emotions that we should all be feeling. It's not meant to be held on to. We've got that all wrong. No, it's meant to be one of the many that we, as beautiful, complex human beings, have the capacity to feel, but emotions only last seconds. They're not meant to be felt and held on to so tight and assigned feelings to. Well, I'm sad, so I feel sad, and I'm going to stay sad for this length of time because that's appropriate. Well, no, what is that? That's not the meant, the emotions can stay stored. And based on what you could have been told in the past, you should feel a certain way for a certain period of time, or because I will just speak for myself, because something didn't work the way that I expected it to, or because I went through a divorce, or because I had to leave work, that's a disappointment. And I've failed at that now, or I couldn't save somebody. All of these assigned things that they're not real. They never were real, but I somehow found a way to assign them to feelings or thoughts. And that's what I've been practicing and working through and teaching others to really let go of.
mm.
Yeah.
Yes, it's interesting. So I am the type of person who naturally is more stoic in nature. Not
Mhm.
stoic the philosophy, although I'm a big fan, but stoic
Yes.
the persona. So again, going through the divorce and going through closing the business, a lot of people around me were very uncomfortable with the way that I was,
Right.
because I didn't show
Sure.
what was going on. I didn't show what was happening inside. And everyone was like, they didn't say it to me, of course, but why isn't Jerry, what's wrong with him? Why isn't he sad?
Right.
Why isn't he upset? Why
Right.
isn't he XYZ? Why didn't he have, all these things going on that society tells us that we should have? Now,
Mhm.
again, I had them going on internally because
Right.
I'm able to be and not
Mhm.
show them. I don't feel it necessary that the world knows what I have going on in my head.
Right.
But at the same time, still, over the last couple of months, I've been in a pretty good place. And all of that only happened 6 months ago. My
Mhm.
feeling is, for a lot of people in that period of time, having those two things happen potentially would still be not in a great place.
Right.
So it supports what you're saying about, do you have to be sad? Do you have to be distraught? Do you have to be XYZ because you
Right.
have this thing happen to you? Well, that's soon for you to start. I'm not dating anybody, but that's, if I were,
Right.
that's soon for you to start
Sure.
dating. Well, who said that there's a time frame?
Exactly. Exactly.
So, but
And
unless you
yeah.
challenge the idea, you
Right.
can't start to pull it apart.
You've got to challenge the opinion. The opinion and the idea, ask yourself where they came from. Where on earth did these ever come from in the first place? Who wrote these down in the book of how to be human? Here's the guide to the proper timeline of all the things. Because there's no expression as us, as you, as me on this earth. There's no other expression, nor will there ever be. The way that you do things, that you feel things, that you express things. That's why we're all gifts. And that's why it's our one beautiful job to find our way back to self-actualization, and to expend these gifts out into the world to be of service. But the truth is, there is no timeline. And how it's so interesting you say that, because we're quite opposite in that sense. I would love to be stoic, but I am not. I am an emotional being, and I
Hey,
always
it
will
gets me in
be.
trouble.
I like sometimes I do not have a poker face. I will never play poker. My feelings they'll go through my face, but I'm also quite passionate about things that I do. Expressive energy comes out, and sometimes I wish. But now what I found, a beautiful way for me to control that, is to step back and say, I can't answer you right now because I need to process what's going on. My emotions do not control me. They are a part of me, a beautiful part of me, all of them, but they do not control me. And the way that I'm going to show up in my life is going to be through thoughtfulness. And I need to go have stillness. And that can be very irritating to my partner. Where he's like, I want an answer. We're arguing and you just need to go walk, and he needs an answer right now. And it's difficult and things get very tense. And I say, I might need half a day because I need to know that I'm expressing myself in the proper way that I need to be expressed so we can work through this. And I do that with my kids. I put myself in timeout too. Sometimes at work, I need a little bit more time because that's how I operate. So we all find our beautiful balance within this, but there's no right or wrong and there's no time frame. So it's interesting because all that I ever ask of anybody that I work with when we deal with emotional needs, right, is that you identify them and you feel them. What happens is that when you try to push them down and you don't want to see them, you don't want to feel them, this isn't appropriate. You can't do this right now. It's too hard. If you don't take the appropriate time and the stillness and the reflection to feel them, they will stay stored. And that's where the trauma, the angst, the anxiety, the extended period of holding on to them will be created, right? You have to work through them. You have to see them. You have to name them. And you have to be fine with them, accept them. They are a part of the beautiful part about being you, all of it. If we are not experiencing all the emotions in this life, have we lived? Truly, to the extent, would happiness be so happy if we didn't know how deeply sad and hurt we could be? Are we not loving to our fullest potential if we're not also being hurt sometimes to the extreme? I mean, I hope I leave this world and I am just spent, tattered, and torn because I have done and I have given it all and I have loved unconditionally. And as I mentioned before, losing incredible people in my life, I still choose to get up and march on. I mean, I'm not a victim of that. That was a beautiful gift that I had of them. And yes, it was hard. It will always be hard, and I will lose others. And I will have heartbreak and I will go through traumatic events still, but that's part of our journey.
As will everybody. And it is only, like you said, in the blocking of it or the pretending that it's not
Yes,
reality or the pretending that it's not going to happen. That's what causes suffering, not
right.
the happening of it. The way that I
Yes.
think about it, whenever I was closing the gym, actually, in the email that I sent out, the last line that I said
Mm.
at the bottom was, and this is a Chinese proverb, I believe, but it was, don't be sad that it's over, be glad that it happened.
Yes.
Now, again, someone who is maybe playing devil's advocate or whatever might go, you want to be an optimist, blah, blah, blah. Well, no, I'm not sitting here saying like, I'm happy that this is happening,
Right.
but it's a matter of framing it and going, yeah, yeah, of course I'm sad. Of course
Mhm.
I don't want this to be happening.
Right.
And yet it is happening. And so I can choose to leave a mark in my mind as a negative mark and be sad about it, or I can choose to leave a mark in my mind as a positive mark and look back on the things that have helped me grow as a person.
Absolutely. And I would add to that because it was so beautifully said that nothing in life is permanent.
Mm,
Nothing in this life is ever permanent, and
mm,
it never will be. And I would say in it, in my studies and what I've read, and one thing that I will always take away is that creating a life of where you are growing and evolving and you're bringing in and calling into you the abundance that wants to come in and wants to be there and all of the living experiences, you can always and should always have desires, and you should have dreams and goals that you're working to put out. It's the attachment to those things that will always be the hardest to get over. So it's the work of not really digging in that attachment to the things, because it's not permanent. It is a part of the never ending journey until death, and that's not something that I'm afraid to speak about. That's the only thing that we know is going to happen, and that's inevitable. But that's the joy, right? That's the biggest thing of them all, that people are so afraid to speak of. Well, no, because it's the gift of life that is all that I want to speak of. Because, yes, at the end, that will be in its own way a release, right? So it's all in the mindset and the mentality and how you look at it. Absolutely. That was a part of the journey, but this book has many chapters, and I can't wait to see what the rest have to say.
Mm. And I would say, so I'll preface it and then I'll finish that thought. On a podcast, I think somebody on the podcast said this to me, and it gave me chills, and I'm actually getting chills thinking about it again. He said, "What, you actually die twice. First, you die
Mhm.
physically, and then you die the last time someone says your name." And so I would argue that the more you live freely, the more that you
Yes.
live in your life, the more that you focus on being a whole person, the more that you do all the things that you just said that
Right.
we need to be doing, the longer that the second life of yours will continue to go on. Now, of course, you have no clue how long that will ever be. And I'm not
Right.
saying that you live a life so that your name could be said longer. And yet, if you do so, you will live on longer.
Absolutely. Well, it's the gifts that you've given out. How were you of service? How did you impact when strangers came across you and you did something like smile at them or open the door for no good reason at all, because it should be selfless? How do you know that you didn't change their life that day because somebody was kind to them and it was the darkest hour of their darkest day? Well, of course. And I think but you have to embody it for yourself first. You can't put that out into the world if you are not caring for yourself in a proper way. And I would just say, on the note of, death and the finality of light, I think that is the great liberation, though, in a sense. Who knows? We could go off on many, many talks of what happens after that, depending on what your thought is. And that's not what I'm here for. What I'm here to say is that this journey to be human is hard and it is difficult, but it is a gift in itself that we're all here, that we're all connected to each other. And it's beautiful and it's gut wrenching. And
Mm,
we are not weak, but we're all connected in it. And we liberate ourselves every time we detach from identity, right? From just self-imposed identity, self-imposed timelines that we're meant to feel, being told we should feel some way, other people's opinions that we have no control over, what we're told we should be like, look like. Well, no, everybody else is taken. Be yourself. That's what we want to see. But each time you do that and you find yourself more and more by living through the hardships and the beautiful moments, you're coming back to self to the point where you get to the end of this experience and you are liberated on that last breath. You are free when you take it. When a name is a name, but I don't identify with a name. Those were given to us, even in a sense, but we're an essence, we're a feeling, we're an energy that's so much more than that. So.
mm. Girl, okay. Did you say everyone else is taken and you be,
Yes.
what was that line again?
I said, everybody else is taken, just be you.
Oh, that's that's great. That's so
Yeah.
good. That is so good.
So that in my yoga class this morning, it's been coming up so much lately. The comparison has to stop. We're constantly having things put in front of us. I only want to see you. I just want you. Nobody else has done it. That's all.
That is so good. Okay, last thing. I want to touch on meditation. It sounds like
Mm,
that's something that you're interested in.
yes. Yes, I love it.
So I think meditation can fill many voids. It
Mhm.
can fill the void of the breath, which we've already talked a little bit about. and slowing yourself down. It can fill the void of awareness, which we've also hit on, because it allows you to create the space between thoughts so that you can actually pay attention to them. So, where do you start with somebody when it comes to meditation? Because it is
Mhm.
also, I mean, although it's very popular right
Mhm.
now, it's kind of hit its stride over the last couple of years
Right.
through apps like Headspace and Calm and a couple of other
Mhm.
apps. So it's out there, but I think still people don't understand the real purpose behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. Meditation is something I do a foundations of meditation workshop and do it myself. But we don't even need to call it meditation. What I want to talk to people about, and I just really would like people to incorporate more in their life is stillness. I want to be the counteraction to this busy that
Mm.
we've been going on. It's the thing to be busy. I'm busy. I'm busy. I'm running around. I never say that. No, it's stillness is where all of the magic happens. We just don't realize that because we've been too busy being busy. And it's stillness is where the best ideas, the creativity, the beautiful gift to yourself happens, the relaxation, the parasympathetic nerve reaction, the thoughts, the releasing of just thoughts, the falling into the gap between thoughts. So, meditation for me, I'll just tell a quick story. I went to a Chopra conference, 400 people, large room. Was just getting into his studies and different things. I had never meditated in my life. I walk into the room, they start 400. They're like, get comfortable. We're starting a 30-minute meditation.
Uh,
And I was like, I'm going to crawl out of my skin. I was like, I'm going to lose it. I'm going to move around in my chair so much. I'm holding my breath. I'm getting really tense and stiff. I made it through the 30-minute meditation. I promised
Congratulations.
myself, thank you. I'm sure I made everybody around me very uncomfortable, but I did it. And when I heard that little dong, I was like, thank goodness I made it. But since then, and that to me said so much that I had to look into. And so I would say to anybody that it's listening right now, can you sit still with nothing around you? Can you go on a walk without your phone or your earbuds? Can you sit on the couch and look out the window? Can you just be without any stimulus around you whatsoever? Whether that's sitting in nature, and how long can you do that? And tell me how uncomfortable it is at first. Because I promise you, after doing that and getting to a practice of doing that for minutes, sometimes longer, however much you have time for, it feels so good. I will ride in the car now and I will drive for hours without the radio on. People think I'm very strange, and I think it's the most magical experience. It's so quiet that it feels so incredibly good to me that I can just be. And thoughts do not stop. So that's my first disclaimer to everybody listening. You cannot stop thoughts. If you try to do it, you're going to make yourself crazy. It's like a constant, it's the little line that runs at the bottom of the news. I don't know if the news still does that. I haven't watched the news in forever, but it's the
That's a
line
good
that runs
analogy.
across. Yes, it's going to go. It's the computer tabs that are always open. They are going to be random thoughts. They're going to be the weirdest thoughts. They're going to be things that are telling you, think of me. It's like pop-up boxes and spam. Let them go. Just let them go, like clouds in the sky. But each cloud has a gap in between. Some will roll on to the next, but thoughts as they are, they have to have a gap. Otherwise, we'd have one jumbled thought and it wouldn't make head or tail sense to anybody. So it is known that there are gaps in between thoughts, or spaces, sometimes people call. What we're looking to do is fall into those spaces and then extend those spaces further and further. So then you can lose yourself in yourself. And it is absolutely incredible. And when I say self, I'm not losing myself in Tessa. I'm not losing myself in a mom. I'm not losing myself in a partner, in a business owner, an entrepreneur, any of it. I'm just whatever my essence is, my soul is within me. That's what I'm falling into. And it's like going home, right? It's not identifying with the body, the outward appearance, my age, my demographic, anything. It's just what's inside of me. And that doesn't identify with all of that. And that's where I have peaceful moments. I come to huge moments of clarity and business ideas. My entire business balance of you came to me post meditation when I was lying in bed in the morning. because I was like, I gotta get this out there. And I was like, it's a balance. It's a balance of me. It's a balance of you. And then I just started it. But I can tell you, I'm the least productive and I'm the least at peace when I don't take time of stillness. And sometimes that might not always look like taking 30 minutes to meditate. Sometimes it's just sitting on my couch in my office, staring at a wall or whatever it is, petting the
Yeah.
dog, taking a walk. Active meditation is just as incredible as, sitting down and meditation. And one last thing is that if I told this is the analogy that I've heard over and over again, and I love it, so I share it. But if I told you to watch Netflix or a movie with your legs crossed, sitting up, stick straight for 2 hours, would you do it? Well, no, you wouldn't even do it for 30 minutes. You don't have to meditate like that either. Let's just get that out of the way.
Mm.
Sometimes I lay down, sometimes I'll be on the couch, sometimes who knows? I'll be sitting in all sorts of different ways because that's what feels good to me and it's mine. Mhm.
That's so good. Yes, the two things that you pointed out that I think people think about meditation is, number one, you have to stop your thinking.
Yes.
And again, that's just not the case. What you're doing is
Right.
recognizing the thinking.
Mhm.
And then number two, it's the sitting part, right? The sit up straight
Yes.
part. Like I lie every morning, I lie on my back and prop my feet up on
Yes.
the couch. And that's what I do. That's what I've been
Beautiful.
doing for years now. So, and it's also funny that you mentioned the driving in the car for hours without anything on. So
Nothing.
yeah, with nothing on. When I last December, I went on a trip with my family when I was going through the divorce and everything. And I actually had the opportunity to drive by myself, which I was super excited about because I'm
Right.
like, oh, I get to listen to podcasts or listen to books
Right.
or do whatever I want to do. And in the beginning, I start driving and I'm like, I won't listen to anything. And it was like 3 hours in and I still
Yes.
hadn't listened to anything. And I'm like,
Yeah.
this is all right.
It's good. It's good stuff. It's funny. I'll think to myself, what do I want to put on? And I'm like, nothing, nothing all the time. I mean, I've gone 7 hours with that. And I would
That's
even
impressive.
challenge people when you're driving, with your partner, with a friend on a trip, or even with family, don't be so quick to turn something on. Talk or don't talk. Get comfortable in silence. Why is silence so
Mm,
uncomfortable? It is to hold space for other people and to be able to be still together. Gosh, what a gift.
mm,
What a gift that is. It feels good.
it really does. Okay. We could go forever
Yeah,
and maybe we'll have to do a follow up.
definitely.
Is there anything that you've been thinking about lately that
Mm.
you would like to express?
Oh, goodness. Control. Control has been on my mind quite lately, and it's been coming up in conversations with other people. And it's continuing to release control and attachment, actually. Attachment to expectations that I've put on myself or people without knowing it subconsciously, and a complete surrender and release to all possibilities. Because when we do that and we lean into the unknown, beautiful things can happen. You create space.
That's so good. Tessa, appreciate you so much. Such a good conversation, so much wisdom in that. Where can people find you?
Absolutely. So they can email me at tessa@balanceofyou.com or Tessa@SnapBack Energy. I'm on the socials, Tessa Arnold, but email's always going to be best. And yeah, if you can check out the balanceofyou.com for any additional information that they might want, or SnapBack Energy. So definitely, this has been fantastic. I loved it.
Yes, me as well. I'll make sure to put that all in the description. Also, thank you so much, Tessa. Appreciate you.
Thank you.